Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Simonfeld, and you are listening to Pull Up a Chair from Jerusalem, Israel, the Holy City. I hope the show is wonderful today, brilliant as usual. I am working from my home studio, and we are having all kinds of internet problems. I think the internet has corona, and so let's just try to, we'll just work it out together. There's not a corner of the world that is exempt from what is going on. This week starts a new chapter in the Torah. This is indeed the new year, the time for resolutions. These are the real resolutions. This is the real new year. This is where the real blessing comes into being. And that is why all of us, it's not enough to tell ourselves and tell our children that they must learn from the Torah, because that will teach them nothing more than to tell their children to learn from Torah, to learn from it. It's a good resolution to put our studying, to put our beliefs, to put our lives into practice, and maybe create workshops, whether it be Zoom, whether it be Skype, whether it be WhatsApp or FaceTime calls, to start studying together, to start bringing the purity to one another bit by bit. Today's show is going to be filled with, please God, upbeat information, upbeat thinking, really trying to make ourselves better and wonderful and really connect to one another. I've been getting a lot of notes, a lot of letters from people, some very challenging, but it doesn't matter. We're in this game together, and again, let us vow to be better. When I come back, I'll give my morning greetings to all the new country. This is Andrea Simonfeld. Pull up a chair, and I'll see you on the other side.
Always challenging the status quo. Hello, I'm Rod Bryant on Beyond the Matrix here at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I want to encourage you to listen each week, every Wednesday at the same time, for an amazing show that will challenge you, inform you, and inspire. News, views, and wisdom for the nations here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Don't forget, Beyond the Matrix every week, Wednesday, here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
We're back. Andrea Simonfeld, Pull Up a Chair, IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. If it sounds a little weird today, if I sound weirder than usual, it's because I'm working from my home studio, having terrible internet problems. Not your problem. It's a stupid company. And so I can't even go into the chat room, which is what I love. I love connecting in the chat room and seeing your notes. And even hearing from Frumpy, who tells me that I used to be funnier, and I'm not so funny. So let me first say good morning, good evening to my friends in the U.S. and in Israel listening in Boker Tov, Boker Maxim, Canada, the U.K. is listening in this morning, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. All right, so in a sense, I'm engineering the show myself today because our stalwart engineer is trying desperately to keep me in line, on time, and that's what we will do. Critical Parsha this week. We're going to try not to muck it up with all kinds of politics because The world is pristine. The Torah is pristine. Our hearts are pristine, and we are ready to indeed embrace the world, change the world, despite things that are out of our controls. Out of our controls. And so, first of all, this is the first, as we mentioned before the break, you talk about New Year's resolutions. This is it, baby. This is where resolutions come to fore. Exactly at this time. It's not a drunken reverie, all caution to the wind. Let old acquaintance be forgot. No, we finish the Parsha. We say, this is the blessing. The last Parsha talks about how Moshe says, this is the blessing I give to you. And then what's the next Parsha? The next portion? Bereshis. In the beginning. We start again. What does that mean? We finished it. We're standing at the cusp of the promised land. Here we are. What do you mean? Bereshis, we start again. What we learn from this is we don't finish. The blessing is to be in the game. The blessing is to be alive and to try again and get it right. When those around us disappoint us, when the cures aren't coming fast enough, when the rioting won't stop, when what does it matter? Immorality is running rampant and there's nothing I can do, me, lonely me. What we learn from, here is the blessing, let's start again, is you don't have to cure it. You don't have to finish it. You've got to be part of the process 24/7. There's no such thing as wringing our hands and saying, I'm out of here. I remember last week I told a story that had come down from, I believe, Rebbetzin Sipora Heller, of a very well-known fellow in Mea Shearim who heard the sounds of an attack taking place as he was sitting down in his sukkah to enjoy the end of his meal before saying his brachot. And he grabbed a gun and he ran out, not knowing if he would save a life, not knowing if it would cost him his life, not knowing what the happily ever after and the wonderful Hollywood ending would happen. Acted, he did. He performed the Torah in its entirety. Every day we say, Moda Ani, thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you for this year. Thank you for this day. Thank you for everything that lays ahead of me. And we paint. You know, still, when we look at the world today, indeed, I don't know about you, I look out my window and I see a world that's filled with greed, destruction, oppression, terrorism, people valuing one life over another, deciding that the life of a dog and a puppy and dogs that are in shelters are worth more than those that haven't even been born yet. And yet we ask ourselves, couldn't God have created a better world? Couldn't he have, perfected creation? After all, we're informed in the 27th verse of the first chapter of Bereshit. We say God created man in his own image. Shouldn't the image of God have been more perfect? Shouldn't God's ultimate creation have been created with imperfection? You know, our sages, what we say is Chazal, they thought of this question as well. We're told that the Talmudic sage, Rabbi Yochanan, he asked, why was man created in the image of God? And so the response to his question, he actually answers his own question because he was clearly Jewish. The story of God's creation of man can be likened to a king who ruled over a country. The king decides to build a new city, and he begins to build it. And he appointed one of his officers to rule over them. And he said to his officer, until now, I have been dealing with all the needs of this city, with every detail, every facet of city life. From now on, giving all of this responsibility to you. And says Rabbi Yochanan, God created man in his own image and gave him the responsibility of making it a better place in which to live. To be sure, God took the first steps in creating a good world, but he didn't complete the creation. He left it to man to perfect the world. We'll talk more about this when we talk about bris milah, circumcision, when we discuss Abraham. Indeed, when we recite Kiddush every Friday night, we recognize this fact as we quote, on the seventh day, God ceased from all his work which he had created to make. The verb, la'asot, to make. Well, doesn't it seem kind of extra? According to the Ibn Ezra, the word la'asot means that we were given power, the ability, la'asot, to do, to make, to improve, to create. Targum Yochanan translates la'asot as va'atid lemehevad, indicating that God rested from his future activity. He put faith in us because we were created like him, with hands to imitate God's hands, with love to imitate God's love, with speech to imitate God's speech, to complete the initial work. We don't rest on our laurels. In a similar vein, the Midrash observes that the Torah specifically says God rested from all his work, implying that there's no other work yet to be done. Oh, that there is other work yet to be done, but not by him. Pursuant to this incomplete creation, he gave man free will, either to follow up and improve a better place, or to destroy it by sinful act. According to Rav Nachman of Breslov, I know I have a lot of Breslavites out there, there's a dynamic interdependence between individual idealization and the perfection of the world. Without proper behavior of all of us, each one of us, the world will self-destruct, despite our episodic accomplishments. This is the challenge. This is the challenge on this beautiful sunny morning in Jerusalem. It's the challenge of the synagogue, even the challenge of the church, the challenge of the schools, the challenges of our families, to our communities, and the challenge, yes, to Israel, to work as hard as we can to strive and indeed achieve tikkun olam, to improve the world that was created by God. We're not allowed to slacken in our efforts to achieve perfection. The mitzvah, my friends, is in the trying. Remember, not the completing, but the trying. Indeed, this reminds me, I was speaking with my mother a lot this week, Bli Ayin Hara. She's soon to turn 91 years old. And I was telling her about a letter I received, a letter that really shook me to the core, from a listener, from one of you lovely people out there, a devout Christian listener who took great issue with my chastisement last week of this Pastor Plumer and his wife. I don't have my notes in front of me. I really went off and I had what to say about being a guest in someone's home, not bringing your philosophies. We'll talk more about it later on. My guest, if you're listening in, I'm composing a letter I respect that you wrote to me, even though you threatened me that you're not going to listen anymore. I don't think so. But anyway, I respect that you wrote to me, and I like it. We'll keep the dialogue. I stand by my words. Nevertheless, when I told my mother this story, she said to me, I'm frightened for you, Andrea. I don't like it. This is terrible. What can we do? What do you mean there's missionaries praying, looking to convert Jews, to get into their homes? Oh, it's hopeless. How can you do this? And I sat and I looked at my shelf of self-help books, and I understood my mother's fear, the fear of why bother. You know, anyone who is not passionate about survival of our children, of our ideals, our morality, can indeed face despair. Despair won't cut it. take a morning, take 5 minutes, get into your bed, take a rest, have some ginger tea, but get up and grab the world that's been given and stand by your hopeful and loving ideals, especially if it's good for the whole world. Appear to be in a state of joy. Fill your heart with happiness. In the end, you will appear as you act. This is Andrea Simintov. Pull up a chair. I'll see you on the other side.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I am Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Did you know this psalm and many others were composed by a Jewish shepherd and musician who later became a king? Would you like to know some of the inner meanings of psalms to help you connect with God and strengthen your soul? An exciting and easy-to-read book is now available which will help you do just that. Software for the Soul, Psalms for Everyone, available on Kindle, Audible, and Amazon.com. Software for the Soul.
We're back. Andrea Simintov, pull up a chair in, indeed, my home studio without internet, where we're winging it here, and thank you for your patience. Let's just say that, indeed, we are real, and we're keeping it real, and we're doing it real. All right. Oh, yes, I came across a lot of nice stuff this week, interesting stuff, and, of course, for those of you who love my Hebrew and love my Yiddish, let me tell you, the things that shemek me should shemek you, a shmekala. That means are appeal to me. We say, if there's something that is on the menu and we look at it, we say, this really shmeks me. All right? You'll be very interesting in your community in northern Utah. All right. Okay. So some of the things that shmeked me this week was... of course, I'm deeply drawn to the relationship between men and women, the differences in us. I love those memes, the jokes that point out how dopey women are and dopey men are, and I don't get all twisted up in knots. I'm very much, I can get a good yuck out of some good hearty sexism as long as it's not painful. And so, but this I loved. Here we come. Here's a Torah thought, and I want to share with you. It's very funny. I go back and forth from the Hebrew to the English. So Adam Harishon, that's Adam, the first man. He listened to the counsel of his wife. I want to know your thoughts on this. Oh, yeah, wait. So anything I'm saying today, because I can't get into the chat room, I do indeed ask you, drop me a note, Andrea@IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and let me know your thoughts about some of the things we're talking about. Also, you can indeed write into the chat room, and I will access it later on if there's a thought about this show that something that you like. I mean, we know that we have some of you follow religiously. Oh, yuck, so funny. So interested in your thoughts. So here we have Adam Harishon. He listened to the counsel of his wife, Chava, or Eve. And what happens to Adam? He's punished. However, Abraham, he listened to the counsel of his wife, Sarah, and he was blessed. So here we have, according to the Midrash, the only type of advice worthwhile heeding is guidance, which is given in accordance to God's word. So it really does indeed, just a thought that I had, it kind of behooves us to ask ourselves and those we care about, maybe let's discuss this at the Shabbos table, it's almost Shabbos, from whom are we seeking advice? And from whom should we seek advice? it's really something to think about before we pick up the phone, before we start, WhatsApping and what do they do? This thing, FaceTiming people. Make sure we have an idea where we know where they're coming from. Where is their moral belly? I see all these posts from people that are hardcore on left of center. And it's like, don't confuse me with facts. This is where I'm holding. Well, I got to tell you something. I see the same thing from friends on the right. No objectivity. Only drinking in. They're drinking the Kool-Aid of whoever their guru is. Deep breath, boys and girls. We're allowed to select our gurus, and we're also allowed not to agree with one another. Of course, the name of the show is Pull Up a Chair. I would like to say that the point of it is to share ideas as long as it's done respectfully. When you listen to this show, including this guy who wrote to me this week, and you know who you are and you know what you're going to hear from me, you know what you're getting. I'm happy to hear from you, and I heard what you said, and I'm hearing the other side about Pastor Plumer. I hold where I hold, and there will be more. Okay. Oh, yeah, by the way, I have to tell you something. Stay tuned. It'll be posted on the Israel. I went for a COVID test last night, so we'll see what the results are. Haven't been feeling that well. We'll see. All right, this came across. Read a very interesting opinion piece yesterday, in, of all places, the New York Post. And but I love this piece, and it was called like Handmade Reality. I guess many of us know about The Handmaid's Tale. It's like this weird, like quasi sci-fi show on Netflix. And but here was an article that talked about deeply religious marriages have more spousal equality. And it was kind of born of the Senate hearings of Amy Coney Barrett, who is being seriously considered for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat on the American Supreme Court. And I'm not going to comment on the SCOTUS election, but what I was fascinated by was from the moment I saw or I read a little bit about Amy Coney Barrett, I really was able to relate to her and her life very, very well. Here's a woman with tons of stuff on her plate. Here's a woman raising a lot of children. Here is a woman juggling both career and marriage and commitment to her church and love of her country. Whether we love of her country or appreciate whatever church she is choosing to pray in, here is a woman who wakes up in the morning and seems to have a clear path set out in front of her. And I liked it very much. And I heard these people dissing on her marriage. And this article goes on and talks about how religious marriages seem to have more equality. Now, granted, in my opinion, IMO, if we are texting together, there's a lot of toxicity hiding behind the name of religion, no doubt. You know, we know all about this. Everybody, we hear this about cult abuse. But I have to tell you, as somebody who lives in an observant household, I do indeed loathe the word religious, because I know many non-religious practicing people who I would consider to be deeply, deeply religious, deeply God-connected, who really do not subscribe to any official faith. Nevertheless, you know, the Sabbath comes, the shape of our Sabbath, and I think my Christian friends would probably agree with me. And I'm curious, the shape of my Sabbath is based on my relationship to God. My husband knows that the peace in this house has to do so much with my faith, our attention to meals, and the beauty of the way I set our table, which is indeed almost a replica of the Mizbeach, the altar. Our table is an altar. Our quiet, our discussions replicate that which is holy. My husband can only be as holy as I am. And he cares deeply. And it's not just him. I would like to think that, you know, he's super special. But I know many religious men, observant men, who deeply care what their wives care about. Their wives had better be happy. Their wives had better be taken care of. And that's in every arena in life, and I will not expound. If the religious home is a shrine, then indeed the marriage is a happier one. It's not surprising that when both partners, according to this article, when both partners participate in home-based rituals, women are more satisfied. I absolutely adored this article. It has nothing to do with submission. Measuredly, a family's religiosity is actually, in both my opinion and the opinion of this writer, what is this writer's name? Naomi Schaefer Riley. It's a sign of a woman's power, not her submissiveness. I really like that a lot. All right, before we go into our last segment, in our last 2 minutes, mind-blowing. Write me a note, Andrea at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I will send you a transcript of the following article. Rabbi Benny Lau, who is the chief Ashkenazi rabbi in Israel, came out this week with a guide. It is not a religious doctrine. It is not a new halacha, Jewish law, but merely a statement, a very powerful statement regarding religious LGBTQ and Jews, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual questioning community and Jews, and it's called Not Good to Be Alone. The document is meant to provide guidance on relationships and families of members of the religious LGBTQ community, which has been severely lacking from religious literature. I read the article. I have read excerpts from the piece. Again, the point of Pull Up a Chair is not to come down strong on any side, but merely to learn and grow together. And what Benny Lau writes, what Rabbi Lau says, only on one thing it is said in the Torah, that it is not good. It is not good for man to be alone. And this is how he introduces the document, and it's intended to provide guidance on these relationships. And he writes in the document, and he also has quotes from several rabbis, that the Orthodox community has to be a little bit more open, and the dialogue must continue. I'm flipping down to the end of this, in the interest of time, to the end of this article, Ayah. So critical what Rabbi Lau says, that, we must not harm people who are created and live within their inclinations. And the verse that's held by us, it says, with you is the fountain of life. By your light do we see light. This comes from Psalms. First of, it's time for the issues to be discussed. This is according to the Gay Coalition here in Israel. It's time for the issues to be discussed in public, even in the rabbinic halachic discourse. I have to tell you that there's a lot to be discussed, a lot to not know, a lot to grow together, and there's not one of us listening to the show.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shai Ben-Tekoa, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany's but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom, I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday only on Israel News Talk Radio.
And we're back. Andrea Simmental, pull up a chair on the IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. If this is not the greatest station, if this is not something to be just really, again, you don't have to agree with everyone. But you know what? If we just agree with one another, what a waste of a day. It's to be challenged from the neck up. That's where we're really on fire. The body is one thing. And by the way, I'm supposed to be going into Parsha now. I know it. We're all waiting. But one of the things I do want to share with you, this is real personal, but hey, it's my show. Let's use this time. Those of us who are locked in, locked down, self-imposed isolation or government-imposed isolation, all of us, eat well. Let's eat well. Let's, before we get up in bed, or we open our eyes and we say, Moda'ani, thank you, God, for putting the breath of life back in me, take a moment. Feel our bones. Feel the blood coursing through your veins. Feel your muscles, your legs. Feel the gift of this incredible machine that carries around our blessed head. And indeed, this is not the time to get fat. Now's the time. No excuse. My mother said to me the other day, you're always cooking. You're always cooking. Every time I call you, you're cooking. And at first I would say, yeah, I'm a little embarrassed. I'm cooking. Yeah, got that right. We're soaking beans. We're washing lettuce. We're making meals that are meaningful and good and cooking. This is the great time to be proactive. Don't sit, my friends. Don't sit and wait for the world to return to an as we know it time. It's Parsha Bereshis. We get to create in his image, the beginning. Okay, I've said my piece, me and the New York Times. All right. Apparently Australia joined us this morning at one point. I was happy. I was wondering, where the heck have you guys been? Okay. Engineering my own show. It is so frightening. Here we go. So, again, this is some Parsha. This is some chapter of the Torah. So much happens. We flip. We go 10 generations. I don't know about you. I could barely keep up with the generation that's my family. And in the whirlwind cascade of events that fill the opening Parsha of the Torah. Oh, wait, I have to interject here. We have an opportunity together, my friends, an opportunity to really, each week, look a little deeper. Let's take the Torah out of the cartoon stage. It's not a children's coloring book. It's not God with a big white flowing beard and two childlike Adam and Eves. There's enormous meat, and it's real, and it relates to us. It's not a child's story that can conflict with a Big Bang theory that only the real sophisticates believe, and only the children among us are left with the 7 days of creation. There's no English word. There's no conflict. Okay, so again, I go back. In this crazy cascade of events that fill this opening Parsha, you know what? I don't know about you, but I'm overwhelmed by the number of subjects that are discussed. But everybody can agree, I think, that the expulsion of Adam and Chava from Gan Eden, after they exercised their free will to disobey God's commandment, this is an independent issue, and it's worth dwelling upon, and it's worth discussing. I'm getting a little bit of feedback in this. Okay, what was life like within the Garden of Eden? It's pretty much unknown. Not just what the children's books teach us, but it's really unknown. It's obvious that human nature was very different there, and that shame and titillating pornographic sexual desire, that was absent. There was, we couldn't even envision such an innocent attitude towards adoring one another, touching one another, feeling filled with the presence of one another and celebrating our differences. But, once we were driven out of the garden, we were prevented from ever again living in that state of innocence and health. Adam and Eve, I have to use the Hebrew words. I'm really struggling with the with this English. Adam and Chava and their offspring, they began to engage in a life and to live in a world that unfortunately is very recognizable to us. What are they faced with now? Sibling rivalry, jealousy, murder, psychological depression, sexual laxity, abuse. It's part of our daily papers. It's every day. It's a story of humankind. Human beings now, we struggle with one another. We struggle over physical safety, financial safety, complete with constant dangers, constant hostility, constant sickness born of our own irresponsibility. But in the memory of Gan Eden, never left from Adam and Chava, or from their descendants, no matter how many centuries have passed since we were kicked out. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why the Torah records for us, that in the hundreds of years that the early human beings lived, that even over 900 years later, in the memory of Garden of Eden, it still burns bright in the brains of Adam and Chava and their descendants. We come all the way to the generation of Noah at the end of this, and we're going to see they refer to the garden and how far away they fell. We're always, all of us, in our homes, in our relationships, even in the act of recreating human life, regardless of how we bring human life into the world, there's nary a soul that doesn't look at the new life emerging and have great hope, and even what we say, the avak, the dust of a recollection of what it was to be present at the beginning of time. Unfortunately, human society, we've witnessed millions upon millions of murders over our long history, no discussion. And yet, we still have laws. We're still trying to create this murder-free society. And we don't feel that like it's a vain or foolish hope. We have people that are against, gun ownership. There are those who still believe in locking away those who commit murder, either deliberately or inadvertently. Within every one of us, again, as I said, there's this fragment of memory that recalls that we were pristine. We were once worthy of living in the garden. And interesting, back to the point that we begin and we talk about each week, human society has never really completely despaired, in spite of all the historical evidence that we're impossible. That it's impossible to create a world of serenity, spirituality, harmony, and just good attitude towards one another. It's that memory of Gan Eden that gives us no peace and doesn't allow us to become so desensitized that we accept the current situation and the human condition as unchangeable. These are the words I offered to my mother when she said, "Oh my gosh, it's impossible. What will you do against those who want to kill your Jewish soul?" I say, "I will keep plugging away, Mommy. We will keep doing this show, Mommy. We will keep being kind, Mommy. We will keep giving tzedakah. We will keep smiling at strangers. We will keep donating blood. We will keep believing in the potential of the human race." The angels that guard the garden, they're represented in the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kodeshim in the temple. They had the faces of children in the holy temple that was destroyed. Angels with the faces of children indicate to us that somehow, someday, in God's time and in the future, let it be soon, will be able to once again enter Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, and truly live in a better world promised to us by our prophets. You know, the show's winding down, and I must get this in. We're taught that Adam, was created singly. He was created alone. So there's not one person in the human race can claim to be of a better pedigree than the last guy. A second reason is these are advanced by scholars, that it proves the power and inherent worth of an individual. In a world that has barely survived a century, in which hundreds of millions of people have been deemed worthless, killed, annihilated, the Torah reaffirms the worth of the individual life. Second, of that individual life. Every individual is a potential Noah, someone who can find favor in God's eyes to give the world a new and fresh start. But creating such individuals, we all have to be patient. We're not allowed to be dismayed. We're not allowed to be disappointed in plagues and our leaders. Even if our generations fail to achieve our goals of recreating the world in holiness, we are not free from the task of attempting to do so. This, my friends, is the lesson of the first 10 generations of humankind, as recorded in this week's Parsha. Indeed, it's the lesson for all of our generations. Shabbat, Shalom, U'Mivorach from Jerusalem.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the IsraelNewsTalkRadio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.